Hi guys, I'm Katie Room from Periapsis Press, where I review indie sci-fi and fantasy books. Today, we are back for our very last book discussion of Silence and Starsong, Volume 1, Number 1. This is the last story in this collection. The no, not the just Hidden Empire by T.R. Alexander. Joining me today is Patrick from Cave to the Cross and Michael Kane, author of After Moses. Uh, this was our last discussion, but we are planning on having kind of a live after party. We'll talk about our favorite stories and probably some other aspects of things. We'd like to hear from you guys who've been joining us, uh, and we'll just have a nice time. And we'll do that October 24th, which would be a Thursday. And I believe, depending on when this episode goes up, it would be tonight at 9:30 p.m. Central. So please join us. If you are still interested in becoming a member of my Discord and participating in any future book clubs, you can still reach out to me either on Twitter at RedHedgeDragon or through my website. Okay, last one.
That's right.
So this one was pretty interesting to me. It has some of the same flavor elements as Archangel and what was it? Have ye offered unto me? But I didn't like it quite as much. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think.
Well, if I can speak in the first person, I think that'll help with my review.
Do you normally speak in third person, Patrick?
Well, I think after the expose from Katie Room, but not liking first person anything, I tread carefully over those waters, he said. Yeah, so that's probably why I do like it, is because it reminds me somewhat of Archangel, uh, uh, but it's an interesting style, and at least it's consistent through that. I think as we go along, it'll be clear why your comparisons are apropos there.
We start with Joseph Cartwright, who is
Are we sure we had
the
the pronunciation right? Because we've been iffy.
pretty sure. He's a personal representative of the president who is sent to the CIA for a sort of unofficial investigation uh, to knock some heads together, it sounds like. Uh, Setting is we're 30 years into the Cold War, and he is there to meet Director Schiller. The CIA failed to follow the president's order. It's a bit vague about how they did that because it's CIA, but it had something to do with spying or interfering with neutral foreign governments.
Yeah, neutralizing them. Yeah, taking them out. The CIA has never done such a thing. Yes, just
No.
Look, I'm never going to defend. I'm not going to defend the CIA, right? But I mean, this is like the Batman thing of always have a plan to kill every possible person that you might someday have to, right? Like this one, that for once didn't seem like the most evil thing. That just seems like the planning for the worst case scenario. But it's the CIA. I get it. It's evil. But I'm just saying, I was like, well, I mean, I get it, but I mean, they shouldn't have. The president said no, he's the boss.
Well, is he?
right.
Um,
Exactly.
Supposed to be.
Director Schiller ex explains that the president's order was countermanded,
Mm.
and when Cartwright reacts negatively to that idea, as a president's man might, um, the director pulls the curtains and begins waxing philosophical and things start getting a little weird.
He does the bad guy speech. He's gonna tell you his plan. Yeah. Also, Schiller is a nice name for our CIA director. He's very shilling.
I was trying to figure out if this was based often a specific CIA director or not. I was trying to see, okay, is there any clues here? Is this kind of poking fun at a certain guy? But if so, I couldn't figure that out.
Yeah. No, because they're all bad.
See, he has some interesting lines. He talks about the uh, sort of like power structures involved in like violating social norms.
Mm.
And that's how this starts. Um, so he is specifically interested in lying. He says the energy or benefit gained by lying on the scale that we do yields atomic results. And then he kind of moves on from that idea, which is kind of a bummer because it was really interesting.
Well, I mean, he doesn't really. I mean, it kind of gets back to it, but that's kind of jumping ahead.
Sure.
Um, Continue for now.
He talks about some research that they did that unearthed the archetypal liar. And he says, I could deliver to the president a weapon more powerful than anything the Air Force could launch or drop. Uh, and this archetypal liar is the principality or superorganism that countermanded the president's order.
Yeah.
Okay, once again, we've got more C.S. Lewis Space Trilogy references here. Have either of you read it?
Yeah.
Okay, we have the macrobes, right? The macrobes from That Hideous Strength, which you were the one. That was the one you said you didn't like, right?
True.
Right. But that was that the scientists reaching up and discovering and communicating with these higher beings making contact, and it's just demons. They were just talking to demons. Right? The scientist's grand discovery was talking to demons. Spoiler, but the macros,
let's hear him out. He might have a point, though.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, because the question is, right, so the president's the commander-in-chief, his order was countermanded. Countermanded by whom is the question to ask here.
Right.
And so he's given it. But I like how there's no the CIA chief is supposed to be this a slick guy who has plausible deniability, but he seems to be laying all his cards out on the table here for our agent in standing for the president. And it's quite confusing even to a politician.
And we get into the demonic pretty quickly here.
Yeah, when it starts going weird, it's like people crawling up the walls weird very quickly, right? It's not just the room gets dark and he speaks in an unnaturally loud voice. It gets very weird.
And yet the word demonic is never used.
Yeah, well, they don't see themselves as the bad guy.
Principality. We use the word principality, I believe.
Yeah.
That's pretty clearly associated with demons,
I suppose. So
I mean, if you're the one making contact with the principality, associated with lies, are you going to admit that maybe it's just demons? I mean, are you going to say that word?
Yeah, it's all very sterile sounding, but it's not very sterile looking. We've got Cartwright tries to leave, the door's locked, and Schiller's head turns around backwards.
Yeah, like an owl.
And then he starts getting into the really interesting bits of his story. His like agents that are sort of deeper into the sort of lying research stuff, hearing voices. And he says, we thought we'd reached the edge of human sanity, basically, until the voices started spilling secrets. So these voices knew more than they did about, or knew more than the agents should know about the CIA and their stuff, and then the USSR and their stuff. And then he talks about ESP and LSD, as one does when one begins talking weird
I
government
was about to say, as one
stuff.
does when
Weird.
one
I'm
begins talking
sorry.
about the CIA in this era.
This is officially sanctioned research. This is MK Ultra. This is what created the likes of people like Sirhan Sirhan, or if you take the route of well researched people, this is Charles Manson being utilized by the CIA to hopefully start a race war that they eventually abandoned.
I was about to say MK Ultra was name dropped in the story, wasn't it?
Yes, they kind of do that with like the ESP section, but
Yeah,
like
that's right. Okay, that's right.
remote viewing is part of this as well.
Mm.
This is the Psy ops of it. The Men Who Stare at Goats. Don't watch the movie, read the book. It's way better and doesn't take it as a joke because it's not. Yeah, this is laden in reality. So and also demons. So real. So far nonfiction. So I'm waiting for the fiction. Government demon agents. I don't see anything where I can fit my sci-fi in this. So I don't appreciate this because so far it's all been based in fiction and now not. So I'm waiting for it. So let's keep going.
He tries to attack Schiller at one point. Doesn't work. Uh,
I viewed this as the Captain America elevator scene, but it's not Captain America, so he obviously loses. Because he's like, oh, I fought off a couple of them, and then it was all over, and I was down on the ground.
It's kind of funny because the I forget the name of the story, the one where the at the university where they meet at the obelisk at midnight, right? How the
it,
solution there was just kill the demon guy. Did not clearly work here. It's like, no, you actually have to have the physical upper hand for that to work. You can't just go down like a chump.
yeah. At one point, I think he says, "I, I wanted to kill him. I still think he should be killed." Like, um, I think that one is "Have ye offered unto me?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, that is actually the first hint that we get that this is not going to end quite so well as that story did.
Well, I'm pretty sure the
I
opening
still
is
think he
like
should be killed.
I'm pretty sure the opening of I don't expect this ever to see the light of day. I do it for myself more than anyone else. Safe deposit box, all that. The opening kind of hints that yeah, this is bad.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
Uh,
Kind of
I,
lays it out there that this is my last will and testament in case they get me.
well, and it's that resistance. So he talks about in the beginning something along the lines of this is a testament to at least some part of me has remained, and I like that initial caveat there for letting us know what we're going to get into, but also then reflecting back into and 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 seeing a bit of resistance still within the scope of the story there.
When he opens the windows back up, there's a void there, and some of the men restrain Cartwright and pour liquor on him and in his mouth. He was 10 years sober. And then they take him to another room where it's pretty ritually. The room is transformed into something more circular than it was when he first came in. There's candles everywhere, and it smells like incense. And there's a priestess in a red dress. She's kind of creepy.
Yeah, I like okay, I didn't like. I'm gonna say I like because they talked when they were talking a little bit earlier about the LSD and refining this process. They mentioned this woman, um, how she was basically their what's the way to say it, kind of their uh most promising candidate for this stuff, whether she was sensitive to the ESP stuff or the LSD or whatever. but they also where was I looking for? They all described her as a whore of Babylon,
Yeah.
which I think was very interesting. Especially if you know much about the way women and Cold War agents were actually used and weaponized against sensitive the honey trap, right? I mean,
Hmm.
they're what I mean, what are you going to call it? I mean, they're paid to do this. It's prostitution in some ways, right? So it's just interesting lining that up with this female intelligence agent, the insinuation that I mean, yeah, she was a terrible person.
At the time
And
of
Hmm.
that's
this
partially
recording,
why she was so susceptible to this because she was awful.
Yeah, yeah,
at,
yeah. They said like she had been our greatest whore decades ago.
Right, right.
but still
And I
seems to
mean
be
that's
useful. Yeah.
you're
And
right.
then later referred to her as the whore of
The
Babylon.
horror of Babylon,
Hmm.
right? Yeah.
Mhm.
I just wanted to bring that up because I remember again finding that an interesting link to Cold War history
At the
and
time of this
the
recording, we still have a sitting senator who has knowingly slept with a Chinese spy. No one seems to care about that.
oh,
I miss the Cold War. We need Joe
Fang
McCarthy
Fang
back.
Fang Fang. Isn't that her name? Is it Fang Fang or
Yeah, yeah, it sure is.
yeah? On the it's the Senate Intelligence Committee too, right?
You
Is
know,
he on the
just
Intelligence Committee?
it's not
Or is it Foreign
important.
I
Affairs?
think
I don't
so, yeah.
remember.
Well,
It's one of
it's
those.
definitely a foreign affair. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, boo. Probably wasn't that because I would have heard that joke before.
Oh man.
Yeah, but she seems to be kind of controlling the operation at this point, right? Like she's like commanding him speak, and he's like, "All right, fine, I'm here."
Yeah, and
Right. Well, she's the conduit. She's the priestess.
yeah. They Schiller in particular, but it seems like the whole organization is interested in not necessarily killing Cartwright, but because they're still talking to him, and kind of explaining things, trying to bargain with him. Uh, Schiller talks about how there's like a real threat that is this other superorganism, Ares,
Yeah,
who he just wants war. He took shape when we destroyed Japan, and he doesn't care about anything except that there would be conflict, blood.
yeah, he wants
Um,
the nukes to fly.
right. But then there's also this. So part of what their justification is they're trying to prevent this other superorganism from from doing that, right? From having this giant war. But then there's sort of other side of it where they're also building this secret empire.
Yeah, this is the other fiction of C.S. Lewis that's very close to reality. Screw tape letters. So it's the desire of Screwtape and his nephew to make sure people don't become Christians. And it was interesting because during the time of war, they're glad, but at the same time, you have to be careful because if you push him, the human that they're tormenting, if you push him too hard, then he'll leap into questioning reality and hopelessness versus hope, and there he might find God within the rise of conflict. So
Schiller talks about the world become American. They'll watch our movies, listen to our music, eat our food, and believe our lies. Uh, which is an interesting, uh, I think an interesting idea, maybe because it is so dated to that time. I feel like nobody would say that now, uh,
I think
in quite the same way.
I think the social commentary here, though, is that that's what happened, and we're now. Although we didn't originate most of these lies, you can blame that on the French and Germans, as you almost always can. We became an exporter of a lot of those specific lies to the rest of the world, and basically spent all of our moral capital, you could say. Uh, but that might be some stuff we talk about it kind of at the end, and it's kind of some wrap ups and some commentary type stuffs. So
Sure.
I think there's kind of the sense that the author's writing it that this is what happened,
Sure.
right? That is the empire, is the exporting
Cartwright
of
is
culture and ideas.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Cartwright is unwilling to accept Schiller's terms. I'm not really sure exactly what they want him to be kind of like a double agent for them, as how I understand it.
In a very small sense. Like all he has to do is kind of turn the report and say like, "Oh, it was all just a misunderstanding. No, everything's fine." And that's pretty much it. Except we'll get into it more, but it just seems like a small compromise on his behalf. It's not you know things that I don't want to say for the sake of TOS that might be construed, but you know don't take out the big cheese at the top. It's not one of those type of orders. It's just hey, push some papers, politician, in a way that's favorable to uh, the the CIA.
Yeah. They're even willing to let Schiller get fired,
Right? Yeah.
but just but
A
otherwise
sacrifice.
don't interfere with what we're up to. And then he's unwilling to do that at first, but then they give him like this weird sort of out of body experience that I did not understand at all. Um, but when they put him back in his body, like he doesn't want to do it again. So he agrees. If I'm understanding that correctly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he wakes back up in
In
bed at
very
home.
like 60s type type setting too, like the projector, the smoky screen. Like I'm in the story, even though you know first person.
Yeah, that maybe that's why I was confused. It was like, okay, so he's chanting, but there's also this projector, and I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah, yeah. It keeps us in the world by being otherworldly as well. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Cartwright is sort of at the end, he's kind of trapped in a situation where he has to lie because if he tells the truth, like if he goes and he tells the president what happened to him, like he's going to be uh well, he uses the word institutionalized. Um, so instead he writes this letter, which is the story that we've read. And he says it's a seed, a promise, a small ember of hope that the truth still exists somewhere, somehow. And that's the ending of that. And I did not like dive quite so deep into stuff as I maybe have some other stories, just because it was very, very dialogue heavy. So if I missed stuff or skipped stuff that you think is important, feel free to bring it up.
yeah. So we're rooting for the demons here because they won't launch the nukes. Ares is the bad guy, uh, but just like the CIA, they have their own motives that are uh, slightly non-congruent with what all Americans want. And that's to eat cheeseburgers and do what they will and be able to um, chase the American dream. And we hope
Eat,
to export that.
yep, eat cheeseburgers anywhere on the
Yeah,
planet.
that's right. Yeah, we want to be American no matter where we're at. And so do they.
So for me, I wanted things to go off, and I didn't feel like they ever did.
Go off. What do you mean by that?
Well, like,
Cool blows up.
well,
Katie
like
was
the
rooting for Aries.
I'm sorry, I voted for Kodos. Sorry, Simpsons reference. No one gets anymore. Sorry.
um
No one gets any of your references, Patrick.
Well, I'm going to make a Stargate SG-1 reference soon, so keep going.
Okay. Continue, Katie. Sorry.
Like in Archangel and Have You Offered Unto Me, but we weren't just given sort of a situation. And I like we started with a situation and then things happened. Like the characters did stuff. And like I don't need every story to resolve in quite so neat a manner as both of those stories did. But it felt like we laid out a situation and then that's it. And now the main character is just stuck there. And the situation continues.
That's why it's a
And
great story.
Yes. Well, I
Yeah.
mean that right, that is the story. The story
yes, yep,
the story is the setup and the situation and the idea, the setting. It's really not so much about Schiller and Cartwright or the president or any of these people necessarily. It's more
right.
about principalities and empires. So the people are insignificant to the it's a what's the word? It's more of a milieu story, where the setting and the atmosphere are the story more than the happenings. The happenings aren't important. The plot's not important.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the banality of evil, but instead of like everyone can be evil, this is the government is controlled by demons, and we're slightly rooting for them more than the other side, but also they're bad. Which is like Stargate SG-1, where in the final seasons, there's the ancient gods that are prayed to, and they get power through the prayers, but they're aliens, and it never went anywhere. And this has a slight feeling to that, where there seems to be. I would really like more from it to understand just a little bit more of like, uh, I guess the scope. So I think we're drawing, maybe I'm drawing the conclusion that they want to push kind of the American ideal, the American dream. They want to encourage the lying and the selfishness for the purposes of like that type of like response to the demons getting their way, or more power, or maybe just more tendrils out into the world easier than Ares does. And Ares, if he blows it up, then they don't have the power that they want, right? So I don't think I'm way off base there of
Right.
why we're following them in the story, not in real life, but that that this is Cartwright is not going to be the hero. He's not the James Bond. He's not Buff McRockard that goes in and is going to expose everything with a punching and screaming. This
Buff
is a guy
McRock
who
hard.
who's just like he's done after swilling some liquor in him, and he can't go talk to the president after brushing his teeth because he's a drunk person who has like this high ESP rating. So he's shown the back levels, but then he also falls. So like he seems to be under their spell. He doesn't seem to be like he first of all, he's not a believer in the situation. And he's not scared of it, other than him saying like I don't have the ability to like tell the truth because that would be weird. But all he has to do is go back to the president and say like, no, the CIA has been taken over by a hostile power, and I have some proof of that, and this is one of it. So you could go down that corridor, but he's stopped from doing that. So he's going to put forth his report of, "Whoops, my bad," and instead of the CIA getting comeuppance, other than the director being resigned, which we know happens in the past, because in the future you mess up and 2,000 people get killed in a terrorist attack, and no one gets held responsible for it because they end up doing it. But anyway, in fiction, in Minecraft. So yeah, that's why I like the story, because this is reality. I mean, this is just, other than the Ares part. That's where the fiction came in. I understood where science fiction came in with Ares.
Yeah, I think for me, the part of the being dissatisfied with the ending was being left in such a realistic situation.
Darn your escapism.
Right. Okay. So here's what I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna try and figure out how to express this without opening 10 other cans of worms that aren't necessarily useful to chase at the moment. But I think it is a great short story. I think it is well written. I think it does what it's supposed to do. I also don't really like it, if that makes sense. And so nothing, no shame or anything to the author or anything like that, because it's like I said, I think it's good. I really think it's good, but it pokes some buttons in the back of my mind of some things that irk me about the way a lot of people think about the world and history. And it's hard for me to describe why that is.
Is it because the American dream can be the thing that we poo-poo and say this is not the righteous path, but at the same time there's nothing sacrilegious about building wealth and finding a better way for your children and building dynasties among us plebs, so that someday that we can stand under the tree of the seed that we plant for them that we'll never know the shade of.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so I guess what it is there's this tendency of a lot of people right now. Okay, let me say it like this. And again, this is nothing about the author. This is more of a like meta thoughts that have been swirling in my mind the last few months that this kind of pushed some of those same buttons. So nothing about this story. I like the story. The story's okay. I like the story, but I kind of disenjoyed it for some reasons. But there's this tendency on the broad right online. Okay. And let me see if I can say this right. There's a postmodern pill that a bunch of people on the right have accidentally swallowed and not realized it. And it has to do my favorite definition of postmodernism is that basically it's the deconstruction of all meta narratives, right? A meta narrative is similar to a worldview, but it's a meta narrative. You take it as the story that explains other stories, right? And so Christianity, from that aspect, you can say is a meta narrative. You can say that the United States, there's aspects of a meta narrative to that, different countries, all these sort of things, right? So I find a lot of people on the right now are adopting this. We're going to deconstruct all these narratives, but
is,
we're not.
Is this
We're
Gaston
not.
as the hero?
No, but that's part of it. I mean,
yeah.
It sort of is in a way. It sort of is in a way. So it's like we're going to deconstruct all of these things, all of history, all of these things about American history, but without replacing it with any other functional narrative, right? The guys that run around deconstructing everything, saying, "Oh, this is bad, and this is bad, and this was evil, and you don't know how evil this was, and we did this evil thing," is like, you're not replacing that. You know what I mean? There is a postmodern element to that I don't think they realize. And so, yeah, the CIA is evil. I get it, right? I totally get it. It's fine, right? But communism was worse, right? And so there was to totally deconstruct the Cold War as being this totally demon controlled thing. I'm like, but communism, guys, you hate communism more. So the story's fine again, but this is more, like I said, some just meta thoughts that drive me nuts. The way that people approach things in this case, even in this story, my argument would be, okay, we've deconstructed everything about the United States. Okay, we're replacing, but the grace of God is that they did contact this demon because Ares is bottled and contained. And so, the story is that despite evil, the greater evil is stopped. There's still a meta narrative in there, but anyway,
yes,
I'm talking in weird circles.
The meta narrative is in there. It's the one not said. It's the one that says, between the choices of two evil, don't pick the evil. This is Spurgeon. Spurgeon is calling out to us.
Yeah, that's
And
not the context. People take that Spurgeon quote out of context, though. People
well,
like to
I'm
apply it
putting
during
I'm putting
election
my
season.
narrative spin on this and saying Christianity is the way forward in both communism and capitalism, where
Yes,
you can have.
but at the same time, over the course of history, God can still use very great evil to do good
Well, sure,
for His
the
purpose and His will,
crucifixion,
and
the
that's
crucifixion
absolutely. And so
is that.
that's those cases like this. Is that if you say, and look, I'm not going to say the CIA did much to bottle communism. More likely, it was just the fact that we had bombs, right? I mean, really and truly, the fact that both sides had bombs and were staring at each other, that's what just held off everything, right? So uh, at the so the yeah, anyway, I'm talking in circles.
I will not make this a political podcast.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I'm not, it's but that's
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to express, is that there's
Yeah.
this frustration that be careful about just going through and deconstructing everything. Even what you were talking about with the Gaston thing, that's just this, it's nonsense. But you see,
Which I don't believe.
so,
I know. He's the bad guy. I'm good with that.
I know, but you see that so much in online circles right now, where every established thing has to be torn down. You were always lied to. Everything was a lie. Everything is wrong. It's like, okay, now tell the truth. Don't just tear things down. You have to tell the truth too. Anyway, the story's good.
Christopher Columbus was the good guy.
I think that is part of what was missing for me.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Elaborate.
Yeah.
No, Katie, not. I genuinely agree with you, Patrick. Katie.
Yeah.
That there wasn't any hint of that other
sure
of like redemptive arc, because Cartwright isn't the hero, but there's nothing to indicate an end to this giant.
Yeah.
Right. And that's partially because the implication is that this could be the real history, is kind of the way it's implied.
As the reader,
right,
not the author or the reviewer, as the reader, I'm going to rewrite the beginning of the story and say,
of course you are.
If listen, the death of the author occurs when the book is in my hand. So.
Oh, you use that phrase.
Yes, unironically, very ironically. If he would to post the letter to future generation, a pastor, the Pope, take your pick of that, and say it's not just like, here's a letter and I exist ethereally out there in this letter, and this is the one hope of, like, someone's going to stumble upon this one day and realize the secrets of the universe, and that's when Archangel Michael comes in, and we have Archangel story in the good way. So yeah, if maybe there was that hint to it, Katie and you might like it a little bit more.
You're right. Okay, so but what the story is there's not a good guy here. Ares was contained, but this is what it cost us. And it's basically, I think, the world we live in today is the expectation of what it cost us, I think, is what the implication is.
Was Ares contained, though?
The world did not burn in nuclear fire, so yes. Yes, they contained Ares. Because the implication was, if Ares had his way, then Russia and the US would have been shooting at each other. And so because that didn't happen...
No, though. But they'd say at one point that they have these mini conflicts to sort of satisfy him.
Well, that's fair.
Temporarily. So that kind of thing is still ongoing.
But no, I'm going to say yes. I'm still going to say yes, that you would say that Ares is appeased. I mean, you look at the period of the Cold War, basically until very recently, and the total number of casualties of war. I mean, once the World War II ends, it drops out at the bottom. You're like, oh, we talk about Korea and Vietnam that we and
Sure.
things like that, but those are very low casualty conflicts. And most other conflicts in that period are a few civil wars. Uh, there's very little armed conflict over that entire period.
Sure.
Um, so I think you have to look at it to say that yes, they outdo Ares. They win. Ares loses. You know, he might get his little appeasement, but ultimately he's contained. Which, you know, again, in the history of the
Sure.
world is a good thing that there was so little armed conflict basically until the last few years. You know, that's changed again. Um, so far as actual, you know, human casualties on the battlefield. Anyway. And that was because, you know, that was because the United States and Russia are sitting there and everyone is afraid of doing anything because, you know, the set world order is you have to behave because the US and Russia are watching and you might tip everything off. So for the most part, people behaved.
Because William F. Buckley decided in order to fight communism and the military apparatus that it created, we must create a military apparatus that supersedes them in the same fashion. And so we must become the enemy, which is rooting for demons instead of Ares.
But again, you're not wrong, but it's again that's the grace of God that keeps the world from destruction.
Right, but we can also be like Lot and flee Sodom and Gomorrah before uh, people are knocking on your door asking for your angels or your daughters.
I think I've said everything that I had. Uh, and I have very little to say about politics. So
Well, that's what I was trying. I was trying to keep it more like philosophical about. You know, that's why I was bringing up the postmodernism thing because I do think that's a problem. I do think that's a problem with a lot of circles of people that all of us know. You know, online. I think they've swallowed that pill without realizing it and are just tearing things down without realizing they're tearing down statues too.
Yeah,
yeah,
well, but unfortunately, with postmodernism, you can't tell people that they're wrong. You can just say what's not right for you is not what's right for me. And so, my pastor has termed it inverted moralism. So declaring
Mm.
good evil and evil good. So it's not. It was unfulfilling to be postmodernist. So we have to figure out how to tell people they're bad, evil, and must genuflect before a sin without being religious. And so we're going to have a redemptive arc of nothing, but you can still be the bad guy as the priests have laid out for you. Except it's there's no catharsis of redemption. Redemption is just you die. So that's still in this new inverted moralism
Mm.
uh, epoch.
So yeah, this you're right. This was less of a story and more of a philosophical thought little worm, you know, to make you think
yeah.
about some stuff.
Oh, it's just a
Uh,
fun story about demons controlling the government. It's fine. Is
It's
everything
uh,
political though, Katie? Everything must be political,
oh
correct?
no.
no.
I believe that was your tweet verbatim. I might be missing a few words there.
Verbatim, yeah.
Uh,
No, my real aversion to everything being political is the fact that that means I can't talk about it because I don't know anything about politics. I haven't read the right books for that.
It's okay. God can use politics to bring redemption.
Even politics.
Polly, many, ticks, blood-sucking demons. Mark Twain quote.
Yeah. Um, so Patrick and I talked about the editor's note during the first
mm.
episode, but I know Michael has thoughts.
Ooh,
Oh
So,
nice.
goodness.
Where does it belong? Where does the editor note belong, Michael?
yeah, does it belong at the beginning or the end?
Mm, hmm. Hmm. I mean, I think it's kind of okay where it's at. I don't know what would be gained from putting it at the beginning. I don't know.
Because that's how you do it with an anthology. That's what would be good.
I don't know. I don't know that it would have caused me to appreciate or understand the stories any more particularly than
But
Maybe so. Are do you have some advanced knowledge of what these stories were philosophically speaking in the general? That each kind of shared a universe of uh, seeking truth and uh, living in God's world in some variety for the authors in their own way, um, or or does discovering that along the way help you? Like, so I guess from picking up and thumbing through this to see what type of book it is, if it's worth your consideration, wouldn't the
Mhm.
editor's note do a good job for you for that? Or
Well, what does the blurb say about it? I don't know if I ever even read it. I mean, let me
the
go.
only thing that the back says is inspiring wonder and awe through stories of high strangeness and other modern fairy tales for grown-ups. I
Uh,
don't know. I like to have a
I mean, I think that'd be
an introduction
fine,
or
but
a forward
I don't, I
to sort
guess
of I like it to cast the whole, you know.
maybe have a few paragraphs of thoughts just to get you thinking in a direction and then pull back the curtain for the end, maybe.
Sure.
I guess part of it to me is I don't know that the curtain always needs to be totally pulled back. You know, it's like asking an author to explain everything about their story, right? There's certain things that we just really don't want to explain sometimes. You know, some things are best in the discovering. So uh, I see what you're saying, but I'm kind of okay with its positioning in that aspect of that. You read through, you
All
have
right,
all
all right.
these things to chew on, and then the editor steps in and gives his thoughts on it. You know,
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
All right.
I'll say that.
All right. Michael says he's okay with it.
right in the middle, smack dab with pictures. That's where it needs to be.
Put it right in the middle.
I did think it was kind of funny that after all the times that I pointed out um, how many people are in this anthology were referencing C.S. Lewis's Ransom trilogy, how very quickly uh, the editor Joseph Knowles drops a quote from that very series. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, appropriate. That was very much in the DNA of what
Yeah.
we'd been reading.
There's an audience for this book.
Yeah,
They read other
yeah, just a
books.
little bit.
Unfortunately, the like classic examples of this pool is rather shallow. So out of the Silent Planet appears.
Well, I mean, yes, but C.S. Lewis is always going to the top of come to the top of literary conversations when Christians are talking, no matter what, right? Even if it happened to be the deepest pool, C.S. Lewis would still be referenced. You know, I
That's
mean,
true.
that's
That's
just
probably true.
you know, C.S. Lewis's chief gift, right, is that were few English speakers of the entire 20th century that had his gift of precisely stating things and analogies to slice through to fact, if that makes any sense at all. Um, I always think about, and this is relevant to my postmodernism thing just a second ago. There's this, it's the end of end of abolition of man. There's this analogy he uses that I read the first time I read it in college, it's just stuck with me ever since. He's talking about how seeing through things, right? Seeing through things, and when you see through something and you understand it, and you're cynically looking through it, and I see through that, right? He talks about how the purpose of a window is to see through it. It's good that you can see through it so that you can see something beyond it, right? Says, but if you keep seeing through things, you'll see through everything, and you'll live in an invisible world, basically. And this, of course, in C.S. Lewis talk, it's like the most profoundly worded few sentences, and you'll read it once and you'll remember it forever, you know, because that's really, really, my goodness. It's like Narnia. What do people remember? Are the one little, like, 2 sentence long random entire sermons basically packaged into 2 sentences. You're like, you just dropped that in a kid's book, that little, like the in Prince Caspian, the bear, and Lucy won the bear that had gone wild, right? And Lucy wondered if the opposite happened in our mind, or in our world, basically, if there were people that had gone on wild and there was no one left in there, and you're just like, oh, this mind-boggling thought in this
Oh,
children's novel.
I think it
So yeah,
starts.
there's a reason he'll always bubble to the top of
Yeah,
conversations, because he's the greatest English communicator of the 20th century. His ability to convey meaning is unmatched.
right at the inscription, to my children, for when you're ready for fairy tales again.
Yeah,
Like,
right, exactly.
I mean, yeah, you got me there. And I
Yep.
never read those things. I'd like to thank my wife and my children and my pastor and God. Things. Okay. Yeah. Good.
So yeah, he immediately name drops Lewis, and that's good and expected. Um, hmm. I do. I have no qualms with where Noel's goal goes, but I do think the unnecessary science fiction slander is, that usual, like, no.
We are not so much killing science as we are killing science fiction, though you may use redeem if you liked that one.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, there's this it's the same sort of groups that talk about science fiction doesn't exist, or science fiction is a particularly degenerate uh uh genre, and I reject those on many premises, but that may be a conversation for another time.
Fantasy is the lesser sci-fi.
Fantasy is the lesser sci-fi. Yeah, I'll have to remember that. There's, I guess what it is. Oh, where was that? There was something I was thinking about. I'm sorry. There's a certain way that, and again, I don't mind where he goes. This want to return to a sense of mysticism and wonder about truth,
Hmm.
right? And that's okay. I have no qualms. I know you watch these, Joseph, so I am cool with that, and I respect that. However, there's a few things where he talks about, we have started to believe that the only wonder in this world is what we can see on the Webb and Hubble telescope, colorized and graphically altered for your viewing pleasure. And there's a few other things he talks about, some science type stuff and things like that, and science fiction kind of being the child of that. And and I kind of reject that way of thinking a little bit, in that things that are true, whether they're a spiritual truth or a physical truth, right? There's not a hierarchy of this is better because it's spiritual or mystical, right? So it's like, the us seeing these wonders of God's creation through the Hubble and Webb telescope, those are that is it. Just as a lover of science, I'm like, why are you cutting that down? That's wonderful. I mean, there is all this stuff out there that was made for God's glory, and that we are unraveling and finding out. And maybe some of the men unraveling and finding it out don't care. Well, that's their loss. That's their loss. It doesn't make it things less true that are true. Um,
I mean, is that just not allowing him to die by 1,000 caveats? Like, it is. I mean, he would probably say, "I agree,"
yeah, exactly. I
but
know.
to just say, let's put these on Time for Kids, Channel 3 for back in the day when you used to have that one channel that you watched in middle school that you did, and you're like, "Oh wow, cool, that's a neat picture," and then it becomes blasé, and then where's our sense of wonder? And yet we look at a dragonfly with crystal clear wings, and we go, "Oh, it's a dragonfly," instead of a Martian coming to Earth and going, "What is this strange creature that is able to fly with these translucent wings, is what you call them?" and
Yeah.
and
So
and see the wonder in our universe in the small things as well.
yeah, and there is you. I think you do have to keep both to some extent. This also reminds me again of Abolition of Man. Abolition of Man is like my favorite work of C.S. Lewis's. It is so good because it's people talk about how it's kind of the companion nonfiction tome to That Hideous Strength, right? That Hideous Strength and Abolition of Man very much describe where we're at in our current like philosophical and scientific realm and all that. But Abolition of Man, the chief analogy of it, and this is something that the bad scientists do, right? Is in understanding something. And this is what you were just getting at, Patrick. Talked about how a tree used to be a dryad or all of these other things, and this special thing. But once we understood a tree, the idea is that it becomes just a tree, right? That it's now just a tree, or a star. And I think that Lewis also expresses the synthesis of understanding something, but also understanding something in the what you're saying, this mystical sense, right? It's in Voyage of the Dawn Treader, when they talk to the star with this, and one of the kids says, or it's got to be Eustace, because Eustace is always the one that's saying the dumb thing, right? Eustace says something, isn't a star basically a ball of burning gas? And it's Ramadou, I think is his name. The star says, even in your world, that's only what a star is made of, or something like that. But that's not what a star
Is
is,
yeah.
right? And so Lewis does. I agree. Lewis does talk about the danger of this demystification, and that's where he goes with the abolition of man. Is basically that man is basically in our philosophical understanding of all these things, as we are understanding and claiming it as this thing, we're abolishing it and making everything smaller and smaller and smaller. And he talks about how basically man will conquer himself last when he can pick apart his own being and claim we're nothing more than man. Then we will abolish man
Yeah,
too.
but I
Is
mean
where he's going. So I understand the danger there, but I think like Lewis suggests in Don Treader, there's a synthesis of these two things, of saying that we not only is there this mystical sense that a tree is this beautiful thing created by God, this great oak that can stand for 500 years, and this bowering canopy that gives this golden shade in the summer. We can wax poetically about it, but at the same time we can marvel at the technical nature of what this is and what goes into this, and how these cells work and this living thing can live for this long. And all of this was designed by a creator who sets a law-giving creator that sets laws in motion that allows us to understand and appreciate these things. So I agree. I just think there has to be a synthesis of the two. Um,
Well,
because if there's not, if there's not, if you fall only to the mystical truth and the mystical knowledge, that's borderline that's almost borderline this Gnostic error that the spiritual is somehow better than the material. When in truth, they both have this value. We don't live in this Gnostic world where the mystical truth is superior to the physical truth. So I'm quibbling, Joseph. I'm quibbling. I liked your short story anthology, and I wouldn't tell anybody not to read it. And I like where you go with it. But a little bit of that reasoning that you got there, I'm sitting there going, because I like science fiction. I think that even in the godless science fiction that you probably dislike, it tells a lot of truth, because there's only one source of truth. So anyway,
can you
I've been
give
talking.
me can you give me 6 proofs that you like science fiction? Just 6.
One, 3, 4, 5, and 6 is in drafts on my hard drive. I'm working on it. Sorry.
Oh, I'm shocked.
Was that the intention when you did that?
Yeah, I think
Okay, good. I was hoping.
I will happily shill everyone's book.
Still working on 6.
I think
okay.
when Patrick and I talked about it, I I picked on something similar. But I think I took the photosynthesis line because he said something about photosynthesis.
I should have reread it. I had
Yeah.
opinions, and I should have reread it today,
He
because it
said
was only a few pages.
he was talking about like learning the true meaning of the physical reality and like the
There it is.
symbolic meaning versus uh, if it was more important than learning about photosynthesis. Like, no, they're both important.
Right. Right.
Photosynthesis is really cool.
Well, I
Yeah.
think I think what I'll say is, obviously you're you have to learn spiritual truths, or
Right.
your soul is in mortal peril, right? But my argument is that the spiritual truth is not categorically more true than a physical truth. When we're talking, things are either a binary, this is true or this is false, right? There's not a hierarchy of what is right and what is, well, it's right, but it's not spiritual, so it's less right. Well, that's not how that
Yeah,
works.
it's called progressivism these days. But yeah, the Gnosticism is the perfect example because, some of the first Gnosticism was Jesus doesn't have a body. But why do we know
Hmm.
that physicality is important? Because Jesus came in the form of a man.
Right.
He is fully God and fully man. He's not play acting as one. He's not a demiurge. He's not, this
You're not a
spirit.
Gnostic, Joseph. I'm not saying
Right.
that. I know you're not.
Right.
I'm so sorry.
But it all comes back to worldview.
His
So
hackles are probably going to be raised while he's listening to this. He's going to be staring at his computer.
listen, if we're generating this much good content, that shows his that Katie's audience should pick up this book because
Exactly.
then he'll get more
Yeah.
ability to else. But yeah, it all comes down to worldview because, like you said, even nihilism is unable to expand outside the fact that Jesus is king and God is sovereign over all. So even when you're saying there's no such thing as truth, there is truth. Even if you say nothing matters, why are you writing the book? Why does Nietzsche care to extol virtue to us if all we have to do is do just enough drugs to be happy in the world until we die? There's that. And look at the progress of science. Everyone wants to say, oh, it wasn't the Christians, it was the Muslims that came back. And I always forget the reference to the book, but the book that I was reading was making the case that Muslims with like the Kalam argument and their advancement of science was only in relationship to how to improve the expanse of their message of getting out to the nations through the way that they do the message of Allah, and that's through subjugation usually. And their progress essentially stops once they've
Stops
fit.
completely.
But Christianity says, look at everything God has made. All things work together for God, for the God's glory. And so let's go find these things. And so, like, I took some of the kids.
Modern science basically begins in the monasteries and the monasticism movements.
Yeah, absolutely. Universities were theological pill houses. I took some kids through looking at lima beans. Oh, wow, isn't that terrible? But what's inside of a lima bean? It's the seed, right? But what's inside of it? It's the little plant. We saw the little plant inside the lima bean, and we say, okay, if the bean, if the seed isn't the origin of the plant, well, what about the last one? Well, they had a lima bean, and there was a plant inside that one, and we go back and back and back to, well, what came first, the chicken or the egg? We know the answer. It's the chicken. It's the chicken because there needs to be the chicken created in order to have the egg, because that's it. So where did the first seed come from that had the little plant in it? Well, if only there was a gardener who told us about these things and then set people into it to be caretakers and then to expand the garden and then to go into the known world and then to the universe and build rocket ships and go out to the infinitesimal, almost infinitesimal universe and conquer those worlds in his name. And look at that. We have a worldview substantiated with that. And science fiction is the truest form of science fiction. Is acknowledging that, but even when you profess yourselves to become wise, you become a fool, but you're unable to get outside and you're suppressing the truth of God in unrighteousness if you deny that. But even still, you have contact. By suppressing it, you still touch that truth and you're unable to get away from it, or else the volleyball or the basketball pops out of the pool, but you need to constantly suppress it in order to happen. But you still have contact. And for presuppositionalists like myself, the image of God is that touch point. You can't get away from your image in the mirror. No matter how much you run away, no matter how much you crack the mirror, you're unable to do damage to your creator through that. And that's why demons hate humanity. They know God is God, but humans are made in God's image, and so that's the only avenue to attack. And so here, with our past story, it makes sense that they want to corrupt and turn and degrade that image, because that's their only semblance of attack until they get to the end of Revelation and find out what the end is.
Good anthology. I liked it.
It provided a great discussion. I appreciate both of you for allowing me to subject you to myself and my opinions.
What is Tom Bombadil Melchizedek?
I had a lot of fun, and I look forward to.
I've never talked about Tom Bombadil so much just to irk you, to watch the reactions. Oh, this is what trolling is like. Okay, good.
Okay, yes.
I like how Michael couldn't bring himself to say, "Is Jesus," like you did.
Well, I saw someone basically make that joke linking Tom Bombadil to Melchizedek earlier today.
Really?
Since there are, folks that obviously Melchizedek is linked to Christ, from the book of Hebrews, but there's some people that take it, more seriously. Right. But when I saw those two streams crossed on Twitter today, I was like, I've got to tag Patrick in this. Like, that is just his brand of chaos. But it's Melchizedek Tom Bombadil.
The transitive property.
Oh boy. Oh, we've had a good time. I really look forward to doing a live sort of wrap up with you guys. And I'd like to do more book club stuff like this. I think an anthology of short stories makes it really easy to talk in pieces about a
it's also probably low admission fee.
Right. Yeah.
It's easy to go, I can get through a short story today, rather than, oh no, I've got to get through a quarter of a novel.
Yes. Right. And it's really easy to jump in and out too uh if somebody doesn't can't be there every single week, I feel like.
Yeah. And I could have a horrible take for 3 out of the 4 stories, and maybe you like me in one. And
Every
like
once
my
in a
love
while we're
life,
on.
I'm only shooting for that one.
I think it was Gamer that we were most aligned, was it? And Katie was the oddball.
Oh, was it?
I was.
Yeah.
All right. We still, now that we have completed this, we still encourage you to buy it. If you have not yet, if you enjoyed this one and you want more, there are 2 more issues in volume, and then there's a second volume coming out. So, uh, can I know that you can follow them on Amazon. You can follow them elsewhere as well. If this particular story, Hidden Empire, sounded interesting to you, we encourage you to check out T.R. Alexander's other work. And again, if you are interested in joining the Discord so you can participate in future book clubs, just reach out to me. Otherwise, feel free to leave a comment, like, subscribe, and join us for our live sort of after party on Thursday, October 24th at 9:30 p.m. Central. And thank you to Patrick and Michael. I really appreciate you guys joining me for this. I had a lot of fun. And thank you guys for watching. All right. Have a great day.